Web3 won't look like anything because you won't know that you're using Web3. You're just using the internet. The future of Web3 is using an internet that rewards you instead of exploits you. But the only way, you said mainstream adoption, the only way to get there is by not telling people it's Web3, by not making people hold keys, not making people, do all of that stuff that is like very technical, very complicated. And it will look like me opening the app on my phone and using it the way that I would use any app today, but I get rewarded. That's really the difference.
Yes.
And then also you get the added benefits of like, you get the privacy, you get this transparency, but most people honestly, and we're the population that cares about that is growing, but a lot of people are never going to care about that.
Al and Kayla from Koii, welcome to the What Kind of Internet Do You Want podcast. I'm really glad you guys could be with us today.
Hey, Amy. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Well, let's see. To get things started, before we get into the details of Koii, if you could just give us a brief introduction about who you are and why you work in Web3.
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into Web3. I started out in robotics back in 2015 or so. And after spending a while trying to build mesh networks for Wi-Fi, I got very interested in the sort of distributed ecosystem building up around Ethereum and Filecoin and all the stuff that was happening back then. The thing that really got me excited about it is that now we can create these global networks where you can actually create economic incentives that don't have borders. Because previously, if you wanted to pay somebody in another country, you had to send a wire transfer, and it was very complicated to create all these different economic entities. And so that actually ties into kind of how all of this stuff works under Koii, but I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I ended up getting into the ETH ecosystem, though, and I was running some meetups back as far as 2016, and ended up running into a co-founder, Taylor Gehring, in Chicago. And he gave me and some friends a commercial space that he wasn't using so that we could start a crypto school. So we ended up spending about 4 years researching every white paper that came out and started doing like due diligence and analysis on those, and then running courses where we taught people about it. Yeah, Kayla.
Okay, awesome. Before we move on to you, Kayla, I just wanted to say quickly, your white papers are fantastic. I've read a ton of white papers too. And 2 years ago, I read Koii's, and then I was just refreshing for this one. So that makes so much more sense now. If you've read a million of them, why yours are, in a league of their own. Kayla, over to you. Tell us about your background.
Yeah, my name is Kayla, and Amy, I want to say thanks for having us. I'm really happy to be here. My background is a little, not as traditional maybe as some other people. I have a degree in architecture, and then I went to actually work in theater. So I was working as a set designer and a prop maker for a number of years before I made that leap into tech. And that was like working in graphic design, which I had done, while I was working in theater, but also into UX, because UX is kind of sort of that next step of all of the things that I had done previously are how people exist either in the world or on a stage and tell a story. And UX is really the next evolution of that, just in a different medium. And so I got into UX, and I sort of fell into Web3 by happenstance. My life partner is in Web3, who met Al, and we became friends before we became colleagues, actually. And I got into Web3 got in really deep, really fast because I had to get up to speed and had to learn all of the stuff. So I say that I'm sort of the empathy side of our company, because I know what it was like working in Web3 before I really understood it. But the thing that really drew me to it was how Web3 really creates a space of equity for all people. You don't have to necessarily have a lot of money to make a lot of money. You don't necessarily have to have a ton of resources. And that's equity in a lot of senses. So that's financial, that's access to information, that's creative potential, being able to make it as an artist, and taking away the power from recording studios or producing companies, stuff like that, where the middlemen have always had a lot of power. And the ability of Web3 to sort of give power back to people who are creating value is really what drew me in.
That totally makes sense. I was particularly excited to speak with you because of your background in theater. I also have a background in theater, and it definitely is a weird leap to make, going from such a like physical in reality kind of work environment, right? You all have to physically be in the same space to really get anything on, up on the stage to a large degree. And then to just completely move over into this weird world of bits and bytes and people talking in what feels like a foreign language. And yet I think that part you're saying about the story is really interesting to me. I hadn't thought of the UX as a story, but that makes so much sense, right? Because the best UX is really intuitive, and the best stories you kind of just like get in a way that's beyond words. And so I love that. That's awesome. I'll want to ask you more questions about theater, I guess, offline or something. Okay,
We
so
can talk again. We can just like hang out. It's fine.
yeah, that sounds fun. So tell me now about the details of Koii. Just like a high level overview, how you would explain it to a non-technical person, and then we'll get into the details, the technical details as a second step.
So we've been doing this thing for a while, where we hand out stickers, and this originally started as a way to try to explain it in as short of a time duration as possible. Because you walk up to someone at a conference and you've got one of these great Koii stickers, getting them to actually take the sticker and not think that you're trying to show them a project is actually a bit of a challenging point. So the really quick version, and what we usually tell people the first time that we talk about Koii, is that there's a new internet being built, and everyone can participate in being a part of the supply side in addition to consuming that internet, which is very different from how the traditional internet works. Most of the time, if you look at most of the internet, like Google, Facebook, all these companies, they have these giant data centers, and they've taken out gigantic loans, or they've raised a lot of money so they can build up this massive capacity. And then we, the consumers, by the time it gets to us, our job is to click the buttons, look at the ads, and maybe buy a product. And that's pretty much how the whole thing works. And what we've been trying to do with Koii is to knit together a network of all of these people's home computers so that we as individuals can actually also supply compute into that network. The exciting thing about that is it also means better privacy, censorship prevention, all kinds of nice little features that really improve the experience, as well as actually kind of give back some of that economic control.
And this kind of goes back to that equity piece that I was talking about, which is that like right now, Google and Facebook and Amazon are the people who are making all of the money based on the value that we are providing on the internet, right? We are the product in a lot of those spaces. But also we're the ones who like make you want to be on Twitter because, I'm not necessarily funny, but other people are funny. And so if you're creating the value, you should also be rewarded for that. And so being able to like lend your computer is a really powerful way to like be a part of the internet in a new and different and rewarding way.
Yeah, and if somebody who is a developer is listening to this, what that means is you can basically hack out about like 200 lines of JavaScript, and you can use this gigantic botnet that we've created. It just happens to be a botnet for honest purposes, made up of your community of people that you can use to kind of build out a new social network or the backbone of a VPN or a messaging tool. And we've seen a lot of really exciting prototypes. So we, in fact, at this point, even have like search engines being built on the network, which is pretty amazing.
Where did you guys get the name Koii from? Because it's koi like the fish, and the logo is a fish. Why name it Koii?
Kayla, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so this kind of came from the idea that like one goldfish, a koi is a goldfish, by itself can't do a lot, has a pretty short memory. But if you take 1,000 or 100,000 or a million or 100 million goldfish, they can do a lot, and the memory can sustain, right? So, if you're one fish, you don't get very far, but a whole group of fish all like going towards the same goal. I like to think of the Finding Nemo. There's a scene where they all swim down against the net and they break the net. Well, if big tech is the net, we are all, working together for the common goals that we have, and creating that sort of like new power. It also stands. We do actually have an acronym for it. It stands for the Knowledgeable, Open, and Infinite Internet, which is all of us together making this new space
and building real knowledge, where you can see where the provenance of the information came from, and you can actually like cryptographically verify the history of what's happened. Very
Yes,
similar
absolutely.
to other networks.
Very similar to what?
Very similar in ways to Arweave and like kind of what they're trying to accomplish with censorship prevention. We just see this as also extending into the realm of application hosting and all of like kind of the internet backbone functionalities, because there's a lot of other pieces there that you need to have in order to really ensure that freedom of speech is preserved and that kind of thing.
Okay, yes, excellent. Let's get into that. So quickly, my background is that we built a protocol called Open Index Protocol. It was originally called the Decentralized Library of Alexandria. And so we share that sort of ethos of preserving the memory of, the cultural memory, the historical memory, that kind of stuff, which is how we also got connected with Arweave several years ago, and I believe discovered Koii by being recommended, by Sam recommending that we look at it as a component of what we were doing at the time, because at the time, you guys were really focused on the attention economy. Has that changed for you now? When I was trying to get up to speed for this interview, I was like, oh, but now they have this whole sort of task thing that they do. And your website talks about distributed cloud, crowd AI, identity and authentication, and Web3 and social. So it seems like maybe it's expanded or something's changed. Can you kind of give us some more details about that?
So I will say it's almost exactly what's in the white paper. The thing about this that's tricky is if you want to give it a token based on attention, which like rewards individual contributions, that token has to have some intrinsic value. And so one of the things that people all want to do is they want to be able to create content and also provide a computer to the network. And those are kind of the two main things that happen in a lot of kind of crypto ecosystems. And so we've tied those together by issuing tokens mostly in inflation based on attention, which ensures that new content creators who join the network can get rewarded easily, they get a foothold, and then they can start to do more with that foothold. The second thing that happens, though, of course, is if you also have a computer that you're not using, or if you're not using it while you're asleep at night, you can bring that into the network as well. And you can use it to provide crawling services, host applications, store content, all of those kinds of things. And so this creates kind of this interesting circular economy where the flywheel accelerates each time that a new application joins the network, because you get more people joining, getting more attention, earning more tokens, who can then stake tokens to run a node to host that same application, among others.
So the
And what
problem, of course,
also,
oh yeah, go ahead, Kayla.
the piece about the attention rewards that's really cool is that when you're part of our ecosystem, you have to put up some kind of collateral to say that like I'm participating in the network and I'm participating
Aha.
fairly. And so the thing is, in most crypto ecosystems, in most Web3 ecosystems, you have to buy tokens in order to participate. Because we have attention rewards as a way to like become part of the network. Like if you join an app and you are posting on that app and people like your stuff, and then you get rewarded for that, you can join the network without actually having to pay in like US dollars or really any kind of fiat, to get that first bit of collateral. So it's a very small piece, right? But it's a way for you to start in the network and then build from there. And then so you can contribute your computer, excuse me, and then you can keep going and get a bigger computer or rent space in a data center or build your own application and pay other people to host it for you, or like contribute to your ecosystem in some way. But the key is that you don't have to pay to get started to be part of this, which is very different than most other ecosystems out there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really cool aspect of something, especially when it's kind of content based. That if you're, let's say, if you're hosting some content on your computer at home or on some sort of like specialty device that you have, and you're receiving tokens for, hosting that content, then that means that you're essentially like, let's say, paying the work that you're providing for the network is then sort of paying for your like Apple TV subscription, kind of would be like the analogy there, right? Where you're not actually having to pay
Exactly.
the $5 a month, but you're right. But the problem with most kind of attention based protocols is that proof of humanity element, right? How do you not have bots? How do you not have fake users on your network? So is the solve for that by having to put up some sort of financial value that you were saying?
Sort of. So we have DIDs that kind of sit at the core of this. The idea of a DID, decentralized identifier, is that it connects together a number of crypto identities. So when you sign a transaction on Ethereum, that's one crypto identity. If you have a Bitcoin wallet, that's another one. And if you have, say, browser wallet, that's the one that you're browsing with and looking at content with, that's yet another one. And so your attention comes from your cryptographic key. And the value of your attention corresponds to the status of your crypto key in the network and how it kind of fits into the greater picture of things. Of course, that sounds like it could be a little bit exclusionary. Like if we set the weightings wrong, maybe we're kind of pushing out the wrong or the right kind of people and we're pulling in the wrong kind. So what you can also do on top of this is you can issue your own attention token to the kind of people that you want to reward. And then you can earn Koii tokens on top of that. So there's sort of this like multi-tiered model to the attention rewards, which we've designed as like an out-of-the-box template for most of these types of applications.
Okay, that's interesting. So when we were playing with this idea to bridge Web 2 and Web 3, we did this thing that we called verified publisher. So you would basically like tweet your key. And so you would kind of create this loop between your Twitter profile and your Web3 profile. And so that was a way of like verifying, like we were doing a test early on with Imogen Heap. And so it was like a way that she could have like some sort of differentiation to say like, I actually am Imogen Heap. I'm not somebody pretending to be Imogen Heap. Do you guys do that as well? Do you, I think in something I was listening to get ready for this, you talked about using like connections to Twitter or Discord or something like that. So is that also kind of like part of how that works, or is that a separate aspect?
It is, yeah. One of the really cool things about that too is in addition to just connecting it to Twitter, it's not that I think or Koii thinks that your Twitter account and your crypto account are connected. It's actually verified by a group of Koii nodes.
Interesting.
And they can log into Twitter, check that you actually posted some kind of a signature, and a large group of Oracle nodes can all verify you at the same time. So it creates this very trustless way of representing your identity across these different systems.
Okay, that's cool. The other thing that I noticed in some of the stuff I was reading was that you guys are really trying to make sure that, let's say, I could run something on my home computer, that I'm not going to get, let's say, like sort of priced out of the system by having to have some sort of specialty ASIC type of hardware. Did I get that right?
That is 100% correct. I have my Koii node, which just to define what a Koii node is, it's you and your computer. You can use a laptop, you can use a desktop. Mobile nodes will be coming down the line. That's definitely in our roadmap, but it's a little bit farther away. And so really the point is that we can have anyone with a computer can be part of our network. So the goal is like, 100 million nodes, right? You can't have 100 million nodes if everybody needs to have a data center or have a server rack in their basement. And part of the reason for that is nodes, like computers, are valuable, but people are more valuable, right? Like having each individual person as a part of our network means more than just like a bunch of computers. So like Amy, if your computer is on the network and you're providing, your humanness, right? And that could be access to different kinds of data, whether that's like you want to put a Twitter account in. We have different, like if you have different memberships to different places, that's valuable for some like data needs for, let's say, like AI projects need a lot of like really unique and precise data that's hard to access, but also just like the fact that you are a person. And this kind of goes back to the DID thing. Being a person has value. And also we know that we can trust you more if you're like a real person than if you're like a bot who's been like launched in a botnet that is just like trying to get the most money or trying to get, something like that. Having people is really what makes our network thrive.
So there's some challenges with making sure that something can be competitive on your home computer and sustainable over time. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Chia and how that kind of blew up the GPU market. So how do you guys handle that? Because the argument, I would say, working against you is that efficiency is important. And so it sounds like you're kind of optimizing against efficiency. I just don't understand how you make that work in a way that like makes sense over time.
I would disagree with that we're optimizing against efficiency, because what you can do as the network grows is you can select like exactly which nodes or which computers, which people you want to like be achieving your thing. So if I want, I'm trying to minimize latency. So I live in Chicago, so I'm going to only use computers in Chicago.
Okay.
Or I want, I need a specific kind of computer because, the GPU market has totally been, is all used. And so I want a bunch of Mac minis to do my like distributed computing so I don't need a GPU. So I'm going to pick Mac minis in Chicago or something like that. You can specify exactly to your needs. And the thing is, we as I'm actually Amy, I don't know where you live, but as North Americans, most technology is made for people like us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not necessarily true. Like everywhere in the world is like the thing that you need is going through San Francisco. Like that's not necessarily the most valuable. So having like very specific communities that can target, either regionally or like based on, again, like logins and access to data, those things are being able to fine tune those things has a lot of value and can actually increase your efficiency as opposed to like having to go all the way across the sea.
Yeah, on a slightly more technical element here too, the key thing to this is this concept called a task. So a task is an autonomous job that your computer does while you're not watching it. And what that means is that if you have a certain type of computer that can accomplish a certain type of task, it's kind of like driving for Uber Eats on your moped instead of driving for Uber XL. And like maybe if it goes really well on Uber Eats and you've been driving on the moped for a while, now you can afford a lease, or Uber can subsidize a lease so that you can go get like a Grand Caravan and drive Uber XL. And so we've kind of mostly focused on trying to engage the people wherever they are and give them the opportunity to earn something. What we've actually found, oddly, with the revolution around AI that's been happening lately, is that this edge computing combined with access to data is incredibly valuable to most of these types of companies. And so what we're finding is as we move the data to the edge, there's actually also an opportunity to do some really exciting federated learning capacities, which means that you actually reduce the load on types of things like GPU. Because a traditional model with AI used to be you centralize all the data and then you run compute over it over and over and over again. Whereas if you pull the data out to the edge, you can actually still do that kind of indexing and you can break up the job a lot more. So your compute cost is a lot lower because you're using a lot of consumer hardware.
That's fascinating. So you're ending up with this like a bunch of federated networks, basically. That's kind of like the network shape is really different than a lot of these other networks because the ends of the network are sort of determining the network shape rather than the protocol itself somehow sort of driving the network shape. Am I getting that?
It's a community coordination tool for technology. Okay. Now, the really, really neat thing about this is because of that fragmentation, you're also able to customize your incentive mechanisms and your audit mechanisms to each task.
Interesting. Say more.
Each task has its own internal consensus mechanism secured by a layer one blockchain.
Okay, so good. Get into that some more. So you guys used to use Arweave, but now you've switched over to IPFS. What is that the only block? Is that the only, I guess, IPFS isn't even really a blockchain. So yeah, what are you guys built on? Do you have your own blockchain? Yeah, tell us more about that part.
Yeah, so we still use Arweave. We also use IPFS for storage. Those are the storage components, which is the base layer of the whole system. That's where tasks is written to. So depending on the task creator, they can choose to write their data payloads to Arweave or to IPFS, wherever they want to hold them. That's kind of, you can think of the S3 bucket in an Amazon context. Above that, though, there's the actual task nodes going out and doing the execution. And in order to do the execution, they have to have tokens staked and they have to submit payloads for verification. When they submit the payloads, all they're doing is submitting a reference to that storage layer. So it reduces the bandwidth requirements considerably. So the blockchain itself doesn't have to hold all the data. It holds the head of the Merkle tree. Now, that's a lot of technical mumbo jumbo. The main thing that's exciting here, though, is we have this fork of Solana that we spent the last 2 years building, which means it's effectively infinitely scalable in a horizontally scalable way. So we can fit as much data into each epoch as we want to. And those data payloads are just the tip of a large Merkle tree, which is like a huge data structure being stored into the storage layer. And so the capacity is very significant and it reduces the overall cost to somebody running a task node because they're not paying all these gas fees to constantly write things on chain. That being said, the main thing that comes out of this is we have a really, really fast coordination layer, which is an L1 blockchain. It's online now. It's got about 20 nodes. We're on the actual third version of it at this point. And that layer can respond almost instantaneously when a new payload gets written to the network. And so everything is synchronized on like a microsecond scale across the entire network because we're putting only these little tiny consensus jobs into there. And it really just handles the storage of all the tokens and makes sure that nothing can get lost or nobody's tokens can get taken away from them unfairly.
And that's the Koii blockchain?
That's we call it K2, which is actually version
K2.
0.2.
Okay. Okay. I think I got it. So you decide on like something like Arweave versus IPFS based on whether or not you want it there temporarily or forever?
We don't actually decide that. You, like, anyone who's creating the task gets to make that decision for themselves. So we've created a framework that's very flexible. So you can choose whatever storage layer you want. I mean, in theory, I guess you could store it somewhere else too, like any store, like Web3 storage place. And then, as Al mentioned, sorry.
What'd you say, Al?
Even web storage, you can even put it into an S3 bucket if you wanted to.
Okay.
So the flexibility of the protocol is just to allow people to choose their storage layer, choose their incentive mechanism, and then choose their audit mechanism, which we have lots of templates for these for all sorts of applications as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Then how does the permanent aspect that you were talking about come into play in terms of making sure that stuff is there and unaltered or, what have you?
So the key to immutability in blockchain is usually about having anchor points on the blockchain. You don't necessarily have to have all the data on chain for that to work. The key is that the data still exists and that there's a cryptographic record connecting all those points into a system that everybody can agree on. And so what we've tried to create here is a way of guaranteeing that at least the verification of those records can continue over time. And if you wanted to have all of the underlying data secured forever, you can definitely put that on Arweave. But you don't necessarily have to in order for the system to work. The key that we've tried to achieve here is mostly that the coordination of the network is immutable, and then the layers underneath of that can be customized depending on the needs of the task. Because many of the tasks that we're working on, the data doesn't necessarily need to be preserved, or just the latest state of that data needs to be preserved. But we really want to make sure that nothing can be altered over time, which is mostly what we offer.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. When we were building Open Index Protocol, we had somebody that really wanted to make sure, like basically put something in public before some legal stuff happened about it. And then when the legal stuff happened down the line, because Arweave wasn't around yet when that happened and it was put onto IPFS, the data had disappeared and all we could give him was the proof that it had happened, but not the data itself. And so then it was like having to like try to go back and find it on his computer to see if it was like still in its exact same form and try to like prove it that way. And it was kind of a mess. So there's definitely reasons to have permanent data, but then there are also plenty of reasons to not have permanent data. So that absolutely makes sense. Do you guys have like both the Koii protocol and then some sort of company that you guys are working out of, or what's kind of the relationship for how the developers are, building this?
So currently everyone works for Koii Labs, but we're gradually moving things over into a foundation that's going to act as the steward of the network. And then Koii Labs will continue to offer other like related services. We're actually in the process right now of spinning off a few of our team members to set up kind of subsidiary entities that will run like certain parts of the protocol. So there's a whole bunch of different products. Like we have our own browser extension wallet. We've got the desktop node now. We've got our own blockchain. There's a hosted node solution that we're offering so people can get a free trial of running their node on a cloud. So there's all kinds of different pieces like that each need their own company now. So we're getting to that kind of point of maturity at this point.
That's awesome. Congratulations. How does the business model work for you guys?
Right now, we sell tokens to pay developers to build features so that we can sell more tokens. Very soon, the goal is that the related services of the network, things that we do with tasks, for example, will be able to pay most of the bills. So we're kind of in that massive business development phase right now. But it's been going pretty well thanks to the massive amount of investment going into AI. It turns out we've got very good product market fit there.
That's excellent. That's awesome. So as you have been building this, one of the things that I've been very curious about is we Web3 people often like to promise this like grand dream of all of these protocols working together in a way that is supportive of our individual sovereignty. And yet what we find in practice is that there are kind of a lot of individual protocols building their own sort of full stack, and we're just sort of recreating this siloed structure. I find it to be a little bit alarming. But it sounds like you guys are really interested in standards. So one question is, are you using the decentralized ID standard that's been going through the recommendations process for the W3C? Like, are you conforming to that? And two,
Absolutely.
absolutely, great.
Not consider doing otherwise. That would be terrible.
Good. Completely agree. Very glad to hear it. And then two, what other areas do you think that we need to come to some sort of standards around as an industry so that we can have that interoperable world where things are working together properly?
Wow, interesting question. There's a
I
lot of
think there's a lot of pieces, and I think one of the big things that like we're trying to standardize within our own ecosystem is like how like audit and distribution mechanisms work, because like part of what we offer in tasks, this audit mechanism, like a lot of blockchain projects, they don't have sort of that audit built in, and having sort of this proof that like all the nodes are behaving fairly and not just assuming because it's proof of stake and you've staked this many, getting sort of that agreement from everyone in a way that we can all see as like true and fair is really important, and sort of spreading that. We've also, I can talk a little bit more about this, but we've worked with Fission in the past because they're really big about building up standards. It's very technical and sort of out of my depth.
I think you're referring to the UCAN standard.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one.
So UCANs are actually a great extension of the DID format. The idea of a UCAN is it's like a verifiable credential, which can also be revoked. And so I can offer you the ability to modify some data or hold some information for me, and I can give someone else permission to access it by giving them something off chain and having them come to you with that verifiable payload that they can then give you, and then you can give them the data or give them access to edit it or something like that. Um, to what Kayla was talking about regarding verification of payloads, which is like auditing as we call it, and then distributions, which is giving out rewards. That's actually a really core methodology of most of the things happening in Web3. Pretty much anything beyond just blockchain consensus relies on like do some kind of computational work, verify the work, and then give out a reward. I'm sure that you guys ran into that with the indexing as well. And that seems to be an area where there's actually a finite space of possible problems that can happen. And each of those problems has an optimal solution. And so we're trying to lead the way, especially within our ecosystem, of getting people to collaborate on those types of things. One of the areas I'm really excited about right now for that is federated learning, where we're seeing that you can actually treat federated learning problem the same way, where you can have a verifiable event that needs to happen. Even if it's a non-deterministic task, you can have it fall within some kind of a range that's acceptable, and then hand out a reward that's proportionate to the work that was done. So then you can task out something that would have had to run on an A100 GPU to thousands of home computers, and you can actually still get it done with a verifiable accuracy and a certain amount of determinism.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I want to jump a little bit here to kind of a more specific question that we had. So something that I'm sure you guys know about is like if somebody wanted to archive the data of something happening on Twitter, right? Like I want to archive my, let's see, like all of my tweets or something, right? Or no, it'd have to be somebody that's tweeting a lot more than I am, because I want to ask about the sort of enterprise level, right? Because there's a level where I can get API access to Twitter to like archive all of my tweets that's affordable and reasonable. But once you get up into those enterprise tiers, which actually doesn't take that much to get up to that level, let's say you're just like you've built some sort of small app, you would be at that level. But then Twitter's going to charge that app $40,000 a month, I believe, in order to have access to that API. What solutions do you guys have for how to come up with that? Like, is there some way that a Koii pool could maybe, individually archive some of that and then gather that data together, or maybe have the pool share the API key and thus the cost of it somehow? Or do you have any thoughts on that potential problem?
Yes, this is a really great example of what we were just talking about, where there's a very, very simple solution to this that is consistent across almost every application that is even remotely similar. So if you're trying to archive a website or a Twitter account, anything like that, you have two main problems. One of them is access, and the second one is making sure people don't put the data, don't put like the wrong data into the pool. So you have to be able to verify everything as it comes in, and you have to make sure that all the devices that are verifying that information actually have access to it. So in our case, what this means is, and actually we've been running this on the Koii account for a while on Twitter, where we're grabbing all of the tweets from the Koii account and we're using people's individual Twitter accounts with their Koii node. So they're giving permission to run the task on their Koii node. They're giving it their Twitter credentials, but it's an open source task, so they can see what it's going to do. And all it's going to do is log into their account, download those tweets, the latest ones, upload them to IPFS, and then verify them with each other. Now, if you wanted to go a step further and actually make sure that that content gets stored forever, you could, of course, also get them to put it on Arweave, or you could establish some kind of a DeFi pool that pays out rewards over time to ensure it's on IPFS. And so there's a few different ways to do this, but at the same time, that's actually very similar to what the Web Archive project, the Wayback Machine, has been doing for ages. It's just now we're trying to do it with more computers, and that's really where the complexity comes in.
And I just want to be very clear. You can go do that right now with your computer. You can be part of that, grabbing tweets and keeping them, and storing them. And a number of the projects that we're working with is actually they've taken our base standard for what a Twitter crawler can be and are putting their own fine tunings into it to get the data that they need.
Okay, very cool. Okay, so what are the next steps on your roadmap that you're excited about?
Long story. We're hoping to launch the token in the next year. The federated learning stuff is coming out now, which is really exciting. So we've got a couple projects working on that. And we're about to release Orca, which is a pretty exciting development on Koii. What Orca allows you to do is to run a generalized orchestration model. So previously, Koii tasks were JavaScript only, and very soon you'll be able to run Python, Java, C, pretty much anything that you can put into a Kubernetes cluster, you can now run on Koii, which is going to be really, really exciting. It opens up the door to a lot of this federated learning stuff, and we're in testing at the moment, so we're expecting that to come out before the end of the year.
That sounds very cool.
And then a little bit bigger than that, that's some of the stuff that's coming soon. But I touched on it a little at the beginning. But being able to access Koii's network with a phone is next year. It's a big project, but hopefully sometime next year. And whether that's not necessarily an entire Koii node on your phone, but just an app that runs one Koii task is a way to get into the network, is a way to start participating, growing your funding from those rewards, which means maybe you can buy a laptop or a desktop or a hosted node and rent that space. So again, sort of empowering people to start with just the thing that they have, because not everybody has a computer. Globally, a lot of people have mobile devices but don't have laptops or places to keep them. And so if we can get people started with just that one small thing that they keep in their pocket, that's the big vision for 1 billion nodes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge dream though, right? Because the big problem with running anything like that on a phone is going to be battery life and the amount of resource consumption and your data package and all of that kind of stuff that goes along with it. Running anything in the background like that can be really resource consumptive.
Yeah, it
Totally.
depends where you are in the world, though. So if you're in Southeast Asia and all you have is a phone, the passive income of plugging it in while you go to bed at night and letting it crawl the web, that could be very well worth it for you.
Or when I upgrade and get a new phone because my phone is getting slow or it's just getting kind of old and I'm, ready for a new one. Instead of trading it in, if I can make enough money to cover that trade-in cost that I would get back for the new phone, and just leave it plugged into the wall in my house.
And if you're doing it on Wi-Fi or whatever, then you're also not dealing with the data from the interesting. Great points.
Or you can plug it in your community library or at your university, that kind of thing as well. There's lots of people out there who have free internet access.
Starbucks.
Okay, awesome. So zooming out now to Web3 as the next evolution of the web, what is your vision for Web3? What will it look like 5-10 years from now when we've reached mainstream adoption? And what are the milestones that you think that we maybe should be looking out for along the way that will help to drive us into that future?
So I'm going to start now. Web3 won't look like anything because you won't know that you're using Web3. You're just using the internet. The future of Web3 is using an internet that rewards you instead of exploits you. But the only way, you said mainstream adoption, the only way to get there is by not telling people it's Web3, by not making people hold keys, not making people, do all of that stuff that is like very technical, very complicated. And it will look like me opening the app on my phone and using it the way that I would use any app today, but I get rewarded. That's really the difference.
Okay.
And then also you get the added benefits of like, you get the privacy, you get this transparency. But most people, honestly, and we're the population that cares about that is growing, but a lot of people are never going to care about that. And so you're getting all of those benefits, even if it's not like a big important thing to you. And as you like learn, oh, like these apps are like really good about privacy, you're not going to want to use ones that aren't anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Great. I love that. Al, what about you?
Answer on this is like when we went from HTTP to HTTPS, most people didn't notice. Little green box just checked up, and then sometimes the thing would pop up saying, "Hey, this site's not secure. Are you sure you want to use it?" That's a cryptographic key that's being stored in your browser, and it works perfectly fine, and you don't need a hardware wallet. Everybody's been using that for like 10 years now. That's what this is going to look like. The added benefit, of course, though, is that with the world of LLMs coming out, like a lot of people are blown away by ChatGPT, and they're really excited to see what all the next layers of this are going to be. But the interesting thing, I started out in robotics building real AI, and we built problem-solving AI. ChatGPT is not a problem-solving AI. ChatGPT is trying to solve one specific problem, which is to tell you something that you will like. And what that is not actually an AI, that's a propaganda machine. And it's currently being adopted in every single jurisdiction around the world in every language imaginable to create compelling content to get people to act differently on the web. And we're going to get really sick of that really soon. And it's very frightening to see where that could lead. But the thing that I'm excited for is that the little lock that tells you if your website connection is secure could also be applied to tell you if the content that you're viewing came from a real person. Or to be able to look at the sources cited and see if they actually match, and to have all of that happen with autonomous agents that pay actual community members who are using the internet instead of large corporations.
Love it.
And it's coming very, very fast. It's almost here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it fast and slow at the same time, right? It's been weird to me, having been in it since 2014, how long it's taken. I thought we would be further along by now, but it does feel like the Web3 infrastructure is really starting to gain momentum now. There's a whole kind of sector, there's all of these different projects. And I really do think that, and obviously AI is going to, it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship that AI and Web3 sort of need each other to accelerate forward. At least that's how it seems to me. Okay, so you said you're based in the US, Kayla. I assume you are as well, Al. Do you have
actually.
You're in Canada. Oh, well, you face similar problems that we do in terms of regulation then. Do you have messages for your regulators? What is it that you need in order to continue to build here or wherever you are?
Please regulate all of the custodial exchanges. Please make them give people control of their own money. Otherwise, we're going to get another SBF this year. And we frankly need to build this technology out. And it's the solution to a lot of the really big problems that are happening. To your point about AI and Web3 working together nicely, if we build AI without having self-sovereignty and verifiable data, we're going to be living in a world of propaganda. And that's going to hurt you, the regulator, a lot more than it's going to hurt the average person.
Great. Kayla?
And I would say that Web3 is not something to be afraid of. A lot of people have lost a lot of money in this space, but that's not a Web3 problem. That's a greedy people are going to scam you to make as much money as possible problem. And it's not different in Web3 than it has been in any other industry. That said, we have to make sure that we aren't cutting off like Web3 at the knees in terms of Web3 was built for regular people to be able to better their lives. Like the goal is to be able to have access, whether that's funds, information, technology, participation in a community. And the power of Web3 is in the ability for each individual person to become involved, whether that's in a small way, in a big way, whether that's in a financially motivated way or a financially invested way. There's a lot of different ways to be involved in this. And if we keep like individuals from being able to participate, like, accredited investing, for example, we're going to have a lot harder time making the internet the place it needs to be for all of us.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so where can people find you? Where can people find Koii if they want to learn more?
It's always Koii, Koii. If you Google it, there's dozens of links, but there's Koii.network, there's Koii Network on Twitter, and there's Al_Koii on Twitter.
Okay, I'm awesome. Actually Kayla Kroot. I'm Kayla Kroot on Twitter, for the record.
Okay.
I'm the only Kayla Kroot. I have to use it. We have a Discord. We have a Telegram. If all of those links are on our website, so come find us there and come say hi. Both Al and I are in the Discord, and you can ask us questions. I actually hold weekly office hours on Thursday mornings, where I just talk to the community, and we want to hear from you.
Awesome. Okay, final question. It is the name of our podcast. What kind of internet do you want? We'll start with you, Kayla, and then you'll close it out for us, Al.
I want an equitable internet that gives back the value to the creators of the internet instead of exploiting us all for a few rich men.
I would say communities beat companies. And we need to have an internet that's local, not global. Because the way that it's been going so far is a global internet led by a very specific demographic of people who maybe don't understand the needs or maybe don't care. And the internet is so entrenched now in every part of our societies that there's very, very minimal chance that it will ever change if we don't start now.
Awesome. It was so fantastic to talk with you both. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to everyone out there watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.